Get ready to fall into a whirlpool of terror. Hey, comic freaks, and welcome back to Dangerous Comics. I'm your host, Dane Georges, and today we're looking at Junji Ito's Uzumaki. Now, what a better way to kick off October and the Halloween month than looking at the master of horror himself, Junji Ito, with a spiral into horror, Uzumaki. Now, if you've been living under a rock and you've never seen Junji Ito's work before, I don't know where you've been, but obviously Junji Ito is very well known for his horror manga, and as a Japanese mangaka, he actually started off studying to be a dental technician, and as he worked on his manga on the side, and he eventually sold his first work, which was Tomie, to the publisher Monthly Halloween in 1987. And Viz has been putting out these really awesome hardcover editions of Junji Ito's work. I've got 3 of those right here with Tomie, Uzumaki, and Gyo. But there's also some other really handsome editions of his work. I mean, oh my goodness. What a prolific artist. Look at all these pages. Wow. That is a lot of comic book pages. Prolific doesn't even really do it justice. But it's really interesting to look at Tomie, especially as his first work. And I love these editions that they always include like some of his color work, because, you know, in some of these manga publishers, they would have allowed him to do like first couple pages in color. It's really interesting to look at this first chapter to see where Junji Ito's style started and how he's progressed. And it's very similar. There's, you know, the same DNA is there. It's just he's become very refined. Like he's definitely drawing a similar type of character and style, but the way he's progressed and, you know, the fidelity of his line, he's really kind of grown as an artist. I think that's why it's really cool to be able to look at this whole body of work and kind of get a view of the artist he's become and the kind of stories that he's adapted to telling. But today we are focusing on Uzumaki, which is probably what a lot of people would consider kind of like his magnum opus. This was originally published in Big Comic Spirits from January 19th, 1998 to August 30th, 1999. And it normally would be broken out into 3 volumes, but Viz put out this big omnibus edition. So it's a really, really cool way to kind of absorb the whole story. And a big part of me wanting to look at this book as well is that Adult Swim is going to be making or producing a Uzumaki anime. It's made in Japan and it's going to be subbed in English. So that is airing on Adult Swim and then will be streaming on the Max streaming service afterwards. So wanted to highlight this book because, you know, it's a big book. Just to look at it on its own, it is... Let's see how many pages. A little over 648 pages long, so definitely a big body of work. When this was, you know, originally serialized in Big Comic Spirits, it would have been in little chunks, little chapters, and then this is it in its entirety. But each of these stories is kind of like a little vignette or a little piece of the puzzle that kind of ends up informing the whole. And the synopsis of this book, on the back we get spirals. This town is contaminated with spirals. And you're going to have to forgive my horrible pronunciation of all these Japanese words because I am just a simple Midwesterner. But we have Kurozucho, a small fog-bound town on the coast of Japan, is cursed, according to Suichi Saito, the withdrawn boyfriend of teenager Kiri Goshima. Their town is haunted not by a person or being, but a pattern, Uzumaki, the spiral, the hypnotic secret shape of the world. Fall into the whirlpool of terror. So a lot of this is just a bunch of stories kind of in the mode or theme of like an H.P. Lovecraft, seeing this town as a whole, this cursed town. And here we even get this big shot, and a lot of these pieces would come back with this lighthouse and everything are going to end up being story points as we go. But we see that this is 20 chapters total. We have 19 completion, and then there's the lost chapter, Galaxies, and then an afterword. But a lot of these stories are pretty well known, and I think you've probably seen a lot of maybe some of these panels pulled out, especially like this is one of the first episodes that they are adapting for the anime. Such an evocative image as this spiral is opening up in this girl's head. There's also the one where the guy is forcing himself into the spiral shape. There's the snail person. It's all just so good and just done in Junji Ito's amazing style. And Junji Ito was inspired by a lot of other Japanese horror manga. I think he has said in interviews that he first came across manga with horror manga and instantly wanted to start drawing it. And I think what's also interesting is he said that Uzumaki was influenced by the positive representation of the spiral in media, which inspired him to subvert that to create horror, stating, "Usually the spiral pattern marks character cheeks in Japanese comedy cartoons, representing an effect of warmth. However, I thought I could use it in horror if I drew it in a different way." And that's really interesting because I don't think as Americans in American comics we use that kind of shape in the same way. So I think it's kind of interesting to see how he's subverting that and kind of talking about what maybe that symbol means in another form and how he's kind of using it in horror. There's obviously a lot of stories here. I thought it'd be really cool to focus on maybe one that I don't think gets highlighted as much. We're going to start with Chapter 10, Mosquitoes, and then go on to Chapter 11, The Umbilical Cord. And so this story takes place after Kiri kind of lives through this lighthouse incident. So there's a lighthouse that we pointed out in that first page that is like shooting out these swirling beams of heat, and it's not really just light, it's actually like heat that is like burning people up, and we see these like charred remains. Oh my god, just amazing rendering. And just like he draws such beautiful people, beautiful women, and I love the contrast to the horror. I think it really kind of draws attention to both. But anyway, so we start this story with Kiri surviving this incident and ending up in the hospital. It's also really interesting because she is reading a Big Comic. So, little reference to Big Comic Spirits, where this story originally appeared. But she's at the hospital resting up. But she was hurt, but not as bad as some of the other people. And she's instantly seen that there are mosquitoes all over the place. And they're flying in these spiral patterns that are like hypnotic. And they're knocking people out and then biting them. And they're seeing these like spirals of mosquitoes, and it's supposed to be something that they would do as the males mate. Kiri catches something out of the corner of her eye, and we see in the bushes there's actually a body that looks like all of the blood has been sucked out of it. It's like this whole town is cursed, and no one's really able to really like leave. Like we're like 10 chapters in, and like lots of stuff has happened to these main characters and just the town as a whole, and nobody's really like leaving the town or getting out. And it's like it feels like they can't. And I think that's another piece of like the H.P. Lovecraft kind of like cosmic horror piece of it. And you feel just the terror as it's building, and kind of like there's stuff that Kiri's bringing to people's attention and nobody's really believing her. Her boyfriend believes her, but he can't really do much to help either. She sees her cousin get rushed in, and she also has bites all over her. And she's also in the maternity ward because she's pregnant. She's asking if she's all right, and she just can't keep anything down. And she's got a bag, and the nurse asks Kiri to unpack it for her, and she's got this very strangely shaped object in it. She says, "Leave it in the cupboard." And then the next day, there's some terror going on, and there are more dead in room 217. And they go in, and it must have happened last night. "But doctor, what are all these holes? Are they stab wounds? I don't know, but it looks like their blood has been drained out. Call the police." There's something going on with these mosquitoes, or just the bloodsuckers overall. And we see that Kiri's cousin is starting to heal up. Her wounds look a lot better. But Kiri's still, healing up. Her boyfriend comes to visit her, but he instantly is saying there's something wrong in this place. Oh, and she's going to have to share a room with her cousin. And her boyfriend is instantly thinking that there's something wrong. He can sense it's off, and this mosquito's going around. He's kind of freaking out. Damn pests. And he's spraying the bugs like crazy. I love how he illustrates this, like the gas is kind of like filling up the room, but it kills the bug. Everyone starts like coughing. He's definitely spraying too much, especially around this pregnant lady. But then we get a little bit of development here. We saw the whirlwind of the mosquitoes, and now he's telling us that the female mosquitoes are the only ones who suck blood, and only when they're carrying a batch of eggs. They need the blood so their eggs will develop. This nurse kicks him out, because of the smell. She's apologizing to her cousin, saying, "Sorry, he's been acting so strange lately." Later that evening, they wake up to the sound of mosquitoes. Kiri's kind of asking, like, if the mosquitoes are bothering her cousin. She's like, I don't mind. I like them a lot. And she's looking really creepy with her eyes looking like all white. We hear more and just kind of like overall this zee is carrying throughout the hospital. And she gets up to kind of see where the noise is coming from. And we see that there is a group of women all covered in bites that are moving down the hallway together in unison, making this noise. And in all their hands, they're carrying these little drills, like hand drills. She like hides away so they don't see her as they continue on. And now she's seeing that they are the ones that are actually like making these little incisions. It's not the mosquitoes. And then they're drilling into the flesh and then sucking the blood out. Just some amazing rendering. Like we're getting some like good speed lines as she's turning her head. And then you saw. They've noticed that Kiri's watching. I love their eyes are just like not even pupils anymore. So creepy. And so they start to come after her. But as they do, somebody comes out hearing the noise. She screams, "Help me!" And he's caught as they all kind of descend upon this man. As they're coming at him, one of the women is just able to spin her finger in a spiral, and it's enough to knock him out, just kind of like how the mosquitoes were flying in that formation to kind of make people docile. And then they all kind of start drilling into him to get his blood. It's this whole outbreak. Now there's a nurse that gets grabbed, but Kiri's just watching all this in terror. And they're saying, that should be enough for tonight. It was so good. Back to our rooms, back to sleep. Wait. Someone saw what I did. A girl saw it. That girl. We can't let her live. And then they're chasing after her, laughing. So creepy, like this fat, swollen tongue coming out of her mouth. But she's able to sneak away for now, gets back in her room, and she's trying to hold the door. And they're saying, I'll drill through your cheek and out your eye. Now her cousin is even kind of standing up to her. Kiko, give me your blood. And so they're kind of descending upon her. But luckily, she is able to reach for the bug spray that her boyfriend left and spray at them. And it's enough to cause them all to run away, just like as if they were mosquitoes. Says the bug spray drove them off. They're gone. And no one suspected the massacre had been committed by pregnant women. All traces of the drills and blood-soaked gowns had disappeared the next morning. I hate to think their husbands took care of that. They needed raw blood for their babies. In several days, these babies nourished by human blood would be born. So we're getting those parallels to more how the mosquitoes mate, how they need to suck blood to kind of like keep their eggs alive. So there's a connection there. And now we're moving into chapter 11, the umbilical cord. The pregnant women were approaching the end of their terms. My cousin, Kiko, was the first to go into labor. I was afraid to watch. Every pregnant woman at the hospital had murdered patients and drunk their blood. And so she knows, she like is kind of like the only one that kind of knows what's going on. We get a little bit of a recap as she's like trying to warn people, but really nobody's believing her and they think that something's wrong with her. Of course, the patients were all terrified because the murderer was never found. Perhaps due to the mounting police investigation, there were no other attacks, but it wasn't over. They still drank blood in secret. Once I heard a strange noise, and she finds her cousin actually just sucking blood out of a blood bag. Like she said, her cousin was the first one to go into labor. She hears the noises, and she's afraid of what's going to be born, right? Like what kind of like monster is going to come out. So it's been born. I wonder what it looks like. A baby gorged with human blood. She goes to the nursery, and it's just a beautiful baby. It's the sweetest baby I'd ever seen. And I think just a testament to how Junji Ito can draw like something horrifying like this and then something so sweet like this. And I think that contrast really is why like a story like this makes it stand out in my mind. And so everyone's kind of fawning over this baby, and then the babies came one after another, and then we see the nursery starting to fill up. Seems like everything's going okay, even though, we had such a horrible start to this. And it seems like her cousin's going to start heading home. But as she's looking at the baby, she says, oh, he's so cute. And she notices that his belly's super swollen. She's wondering, is there something wrong with him? His tummy's puffed up. And then the other moms look at her kind of shocked, like they're hiding something. And all kind of get silent. And then we look more, and all of the babies actually have swollen stomachs. And they're like, oh, it's okay. They're just wearing belly bands, but they look swollen. And then we see the baby starts to scream. And it's like a huge piercing sound, and it actually pierces her ears and like starts to make her. I think it's really interesting how we bring the spiral back there. It's almost like creating like a sense of vertigo for her. This scream, She runs away to get away from it, and she actually ends up falling down the stairs and like hurting herself more and giving her another reason to stay at the hospital longer than intended. She's trying to tell the doctor it's not really her leg that's bothering her as much, it's her ears. And they're not really understanding, like, why. Because, from a fall, your ears? Kiri, are you all right? And they bring her dinner. Try the mushrooms. They're delicious. And so we're looking at it, and we see that she's taking a look in mushrooms. She tries it and spits it out. Are these really mushrooms? They taste like meat. And then the nurse is saying, don't be so fussy, dear. The strange fungus became a regular ingredient at the hospital meals. I never ate them. And so we're seeing that the nurses are just, everything they're serving now has these mushrooms in them. These mushrooms are so tasty. I wonder what they're called. They're supposed to be good for you. Her ears are still bugging her, so something about that baby's scream kind of got her all messed up. She's walking by the nursery, and maybe it's because her ears are affected, but now she can actually hear these babies talking. They're saying, it's so cold here. I want to go back. Yes, back to that warm, safe place. The water there was like heaven. I want to go back to the womb. The womb is wonderful. Can we really go back? Of course. The doctor will do it. If he took us out, he can put us back in. And this is where we start to get our first look at like what that swollen belly was. Right now, Makio is being returned. He'll be the first. I hope my turn will come soon. Uh-oh, I'm getting so excited my belly's rising. And then the belly starts to rise and it pops off these buttons, and we start to see that there's this like strange turtle shell mushroom kind of thing growing out of an umbilical cord that's like rising out of the baby. And oh my God, that is so freaking disgusting. She goes back and she hears screaming in the delivery room. What? That's her cousin's voice. She tries to open the door. Nobody's answering, but she's able to turn the knob and open it. And when she sees in there, it's just a room. The delivery room is just full of these like umbilical cord mushrooms growing out of the ground. Oh my God, it just like turns my stomach. There was once that I had this nightmare that like a mushroom was like growing out of my lip. So gross. The grossest thing. I think that's maybe why this story affects me so much. And she's kind of like just thrown off by what she's seen, and all of a sudden the doctor comes out of this back room and shuts the door very ominously. And she's saying, Doctor, I heard my cousin's voice. Where is she? And where's the baby? And he's saying, all baby mammals are cute. She's like confused, like what the heck is he talking about? It's a weapon used by infant children. They use it to influence adults, get attention because they need to survive. But the child eventually grows up and becomes independent, but not them. Not only do they want to be independent, they want to be babies. No, they want to be fetuses forever. The proof is the umbilical cord. You cut and cut, but their cords grow back, even regrowing the placenta. The umbilical cord and the afterbirth, they signify a yearning for the womb. Those sweet children want to return to their mother's wombs. Then, these mushrooms, they're not mushrooms. After we delivered the babies, these organs sprouted on their own. The placentas took root where we dropped them and started to grow. And now just look at them, and I had to try one. As a doctor, you see. And it was delicious. It revitalized me. It makes sense. All mammal life springs from these organs. If it was fed to the sick, wouldn't they get better? And this disgusting panel of him about to bite into it. Tries to interrupt him because he's obviously like in his own world with this mushroom placenta thing. And she's asking, is her cousin in there? Yes, the mother and child are in that room. What in the world did you do to them? I heard screaming. It's okay. The procedure went well. Procedure? Let me through. And then we get this crazy reveal of her cousin like with a reverse C-section almost, where like she has been like cut open and then re-sewn to put the baby back in. Just such a gross, horrific image. And the doctor's saying the child has been returned to the womb. I have no idea what will happen to the baby now. One thing I do know is that she will once again have to provide it with nutrition. And then that she's once again saying that she needs blood. Now they need blood again, kind of like they did to get the babies ready. And so he's holding her down, and her cousin gets up. Hurry, give me, here. And her cousin's tongue rolls out, and it's like become this mosquito tongue that would like drink blood, and it's got a sharp point at the end, and it shoots out, and instead of getting her cousin, it goes right into the doctor's neck. And oh man, this sequence is so freaking hardcore as she's just draining him just all the way, as his face just kind of gets more and more gaunt until it's this, and that mouth is just as open, as wide as it can, with her eyes just like as empty as can be. Oh man, that's just a horrifying image. And then this next panel, as we get her like bloated shape as she's holding him. Oh, it's so scary. She's like running out into this like mushroom forest again, as her cousin kind of gets up running after him. But that's when some other patients come in and say, look at all these mushrooms. This must be where they come from. And then people start just like desperately eating at the mushrooms, not even paying attention to her screaming for help. And then her cousin descends upon these other people, just sucking them dry as well. More people just coming for the slaughter. And finally, we see Kiri get out, and she says, I escaped from the hospital. I have no idea what happened there after that. I wasn't about to go back and find out. And I think it's also just like a little bit of the framing that Junji Ito is using here to tell this story is like also like very H.P. Lovecraft of like it being like a first person account, and just this whole thing of like, well, I didn't go back. I don't know what happened. And this is all really from her perspective or from the character perspective. So I think that really kind of helps sell the horror. You really only get one point of view and what they're experiencing. You know, like I was saying, there's a lot of amazing stories in here. I really like these two, and I think they're really scary, and just there's some really like evocative imagery in here of scary babies and scary blood-sucking kind of vampiric-esque monsters, and the whole idea of putting a baby back into a person as well as like eating this like organic material, like a mushroom-like thing that would grow out of a blood-fed baby. Oh, it's just all very scary. And this whole book is so imaginative. I feel like every little vignette, every little short story we get introduces such cool new ideas. So I'm really excited to see how many of these stories get adapted for this new anime, and really excited to check it out as well. So the first episode of that came out September 28th, and it's on HBO's streaming service Max currently, so check that out after you watch this episode. And if you haven't read this book, I would highly suggest you check it out. But we can't start October and the spookiest month of the year without looking at some Junji Ito artwork. Always gets me inspired to make some horror comics of my own, and makes me want to read more Junji Ito, makes me want to read more manga. So I hope you feel the same way, and you are ready to fall into the spiral of horror that is Uzumaki. And if you're a comic freak like me and you just can't get enough, why not check out some of my comics? I'm a self-published cartoonist, and you can find all my work at danegeorges.com. I do a series called Doomskull, which is about an ex-supervillain that works at a grocery store with his minion Bag Boy. I've got 3 issues of that in print, with a 4th on the way. I've got a few black and white zines like The Passenger, which is about picking up a hitchhiker, and of course, everything goes wrong. I've also got Sleepless Sights, which is about a guy chasing down his cat as he goes through his apartment building, and he sees a bunch of horrific things as he goes. Jiggly-Bub, which is about a piece of gum that God spits out, and X-Ray, which is a collection of my 4-panel webcomics that you'd find on Instagram, Webtoons, and Tapastic. Like I said, you can find all this and more at danegeorges.com, which is linked in the description below. I really hope you like diving into Uzumaki with me and checking out some of Junji Ito's best work. And if you like this episode, consider subscribing. I post a new episode every Wednesday, so you're guaranteed to find something you like here on the channel. But until then, remember to think and read dangerously, and I'll see you in the next one.